Chapter 7. We had not seen the last of Yop. He reappeared about an hour later, flung down his hat on the table, and said he was eternally blasted. "You have made the inquiries?" asked Poirot sympathetically. Yop nodded gloomily. "And unless 14 people are lying, she didn't do it," he growled. He went on. "I don't mind telling you, Monsieur Poirot, that I expected to find a put-up job. On the face of it, it didn't seem likely that anyone else could have killed Lord Edgware. She's the only person who's got the ghost of a motive." "I would not say that. Mais continue." "Well, as I say, I expected to find a put-up job. You know what these theatrical crowds are. They'll all hang together to screen a pal. But this is rather a different proposition. The people there last night were all big guns. They were none of them close friends of hers, and some of them didn't know each other. Their testimony is independent and reliable. I hoped then to find that she'd slipped away for half an hour or so. She could easily have done that, powdering her nose or some excuse, but no. She did leave the dinner table as she told us to answer a telephone call. But the butler was with her, and, by the way, it was just as she told us. He heard what she said. Yes, quite right. This is Lady Edgware. And then the other side rang off. It's curious that you know. Not that it's got anything to do with it. Perhaps not. But it is interesting. What is a man or a woman who rang up? A woman, I think she said. Curious, said Poirot thoughtfully. Never mind that, said Yop impatiently. Let's get back to the important part. The whole evening went exactly as she said. She got there at 9:15, left at 11:30, and got back here at 11:45. I've seen the chauffeur who drove her. He's one of Daimler's regular people. And the people at the Savoy saw her come in and confirm the time. Eh bien, that seems very conclusive. And what about those two in Regent Gate? It isn't only the butler. Lord Edgware's secretary saw her too. They both swear by all that's holy that it is Lady Edgware who came there at 10 o'clock. How long has the butler been there? 6 months. Handsome chap, by the way. Yes, indeed. Eh bien, my friend. If he has only been there 6 months, he cannot have recognized Lady Edgware, since he had not seen her before. Well, he knew her from her pictures in the papers. And anyway, the secretary knew her. She's been with Lord Edgware 5 or 6 years, and she's the only one who's absolutely positive. Ah, said Poirot. I should like to see the secretary. Well, why not come along with me now? Thank you, mon ami. I should be delighted to do so. You include Hastings in your invitation, I hope? Yop grinned. What do you think? Where the master goes, there the dog follows, he added in what I could not think was the best of taste. Reminds me of the Elizabeth Canning case, said Yop. You remember? How at least a score of witnesses on either side swore they had seen the gypsy, Mary Squires, in 2 different parts of England. Good, reputable witnesses, too. And she was such a hideous face there couldn't be 2 like it. That mystery was never cleared up. It's very much the same here. Here's a separate lot of people prepared to swear a woman was in 2 different places at the same time. Which of them is speaking the truth? That ought not to be difficult to find out. So you say. But this woman, Miss Carroll, really knew Lady Edgware. I mean, she lived in the house with her day after day. She wouldn't be likely to make a mistake. We shall soon see. Who comes into the title? I asked. A nephew, Captain Ronald Marsh. A bit of a waster, I understand. What does the doctor say as to the time of death? Asked Poirot. We'll have to wait for the autopsy to be exact, you know. See where the dinner had got to. Yop's way of putting things was, I'm sorry to say, far from refined. But 10 o'clock fits in well enough. He was last seen alive at a few minutes past 9 when he left the dinner table, and the butler took whiskey and soda into the library. At 11 o'clock, when the butler went up to bed, the light was out, so he must have been dead then. He wouldn't have been sitting in the dark. Poirot nodded thoughtfully. A moment or two later, we drew up to the house, the blinds of which were now down. The door was opened to us by the handsome butler. Yop took the lead and went in first. Poirot and I followed. The door opened to the left, so that the butler stood against the wall on that side. Poirot was on my right, and being smaller than I was, it was only just as we stepped into the hall that the butler saw him. Being close to him, I heard the sudden intake of his breath and looked sharply at the man to find him staring at Poirot with a kind of startled fear visible on his face. I put the fact away in my mind for what it might be worth. Job marched into the dining room, which lay on our right, and called the butler in after him. "Now then, Alton, I want to go into this again, very carefully. It was 10 o'clock when this lady came." "Her ladyship?" "Yes, sir." "How did you recognize her?" asked Poirot. "She told her name, sir. And besides, I've seen her portrait in the papers. I've seen her act, too." Poirot nodded. "How was she dressed?" "In black, sir. Black walking dress, and a small black hat, a string of pearls, and grey gloves." Poirot looked a question at Yop. "White taffeta evening dress and ermine wrap," said the latter succinctly. The butler proceeded. His tale tallied exactly with that which Yop had already passed on to us. "Did anybody else come to see your master that evening?" asked Poirot. "No, sir." "How was your front door fastened?" "It has a Yale lock, sir. I usually draw the bolts when I go to bed, sir. At 11, that is. But last night Miss Geraldine was at the opera, so it was left unbolted." "How was it fastened this morning?" "It was bolted, sir. Miss Geraldine had bolted it when she came in." "When did she come in? Do you know?" "I think it was about 11:45, sir." "Then during the evening until 11:45, the door could not be opened from the outside without the key. From the inside it could be opened by simply drawing back the handle." "Yes, sir." "How many latchkeys were there?" "His lordship had his, sir, and there was another key in the hall drawer which Miss Geraldine took last night. I don't know if there were any others." "Does nobody else in the house have a key?" "No, sir. Miss Carroll always rings." Poirot intimated that that was all he wished to ask, and we went in search of the secretary. We found her busily writing at a desk. Miss Carroll was a pleasant, efficient-looking woman of about 45. Her fair hair was turning gray, and she wore pince-nez, through which a pair of shrewd blue eyes gleamed out at us. When she spoke, I recognized the clear, businesslike voice that had spoken to me through the telephone. "Ah, bonjour, Poirot," she said as she acknowledged Yop's introduction. "Yes, it was with you that I made the appointment for yesterday morning." "Precisely, mademoiselle." I thought that Poirot was favorably impressed by her. Certainly she was neatness and precision personified. "Well, Inspector Yop," said Miss Carroll, "what more can I do for you?" "Just this. Are you absolutely certain that it was Lady Edgware who came here last night?" "That's the third time you've asked me." "Of course I'm sure. I saw her." "Where did you see her, mademoiselle?" "In the hall. She spoke to the butler for a minute. Then she went along the hall and in at the library door." "And where were you?" "On the first floor, looking down." "And you were positive you were not mistaken?" "Absolutely. I saw her face distinctly." "You could not have been misled by a resemblance?" "Certainly not. Jane Wilkinson's features are quite unique. It was her." Yup threw a glance at Poirot as much as to say, "You see." "Had Lord Edgware made any enemies?" asked Poirot suddenly. "Nonsense," said Miss Carroll. "How do you mean nonsense, mademoiselle?" "Enemies? People in these days don't have enemies. Not English people." "Yet Lord Edgware was murdered." "That was his wife," said Miss Carroll. "A wife is not an enemy, no?" "I'm sure it was a most extraordinary thing to happen. I've never heard of such a thing happening, I mean to anyone in our class of life." It was clearly Miss Carroll's idea that murders were only committed by drunken members of the lower classes. "How many keys are there to the front door?" "Two," replied Miss Carroll promptly. "Lord Edgware always carried one. The other was kept in the drawer in the hall, so that anybody who was going to be late in could take it. There was a third one, but Captain Marsh lost it. Very careless." "Did Captain Marsh come much to the house?" "He used to live here until 3 years ago." "Why did he leave?" asked Yop. "I don't know. He couldn't get on with his uncle, I suppose." "I think you know a little more than that, mademoiselle," said Poirot gently. She darted a quick glance at him. "I am not one to gossip," Monsieur Poirot. But you can tell us the truth concerning the rumors of a serious disagreement between Lord Edgware and his nephew. It wasn't so serious as all that. Lord Edgware was a difficult man to get on with. Even you found that? I'm not speaking of myself. I never had any disagreements with Lord Edgware. He always found me perfectly reliable. But as regards Captain Marsh, Poirot stuck to it, gently continuing to goad her into further revelations. Miss Carroll shrugged her shoulders. He was extravagant, got into debt. There was some other trouble, I don't know exactly what. They quarreled. Lord Edgware forbade him the house. That's all. Her mouth closed firmly. Evidently, she intended to say no more. The room we had interviewed her in was on the first floor. As we left it, Poirot took me by the arm. A little minute. Remain here if you will, Hastings. I am going down with Yup. Watch till we have gone into the library. Then join us there. I have long ago given up asking Poirot questions beginning, why? Like the Light Brigade, mine is not to reason why, mine is but to do or die. Though fortunately it has not yet come to dying. I thought that possibly he suspected the butler of spying on him, and wanted to know if such were really the case. I took up my stand looking over the banister. Poirot and Yup went first to the front door, out of my sight. Then they reappeared, walking slowly along the hall. I followed their backs with my eye until they had gone into the library. I waited a minute or two in case the butler appeared, but there was no sign of anyone, so I ran down the stairs and joined them. The body had, of course, been removed. The curtains were drawn and the electric light was on. Poirot and Yup were standing in the middle of the room, looking around them. "Nothing here," Yup was saying, and Poirot replied with a smile. "Alas, not the cigarette ash, nor the footprint, nor a lady's glove, nor even a lingering perfume. Nothing that the detective of fiction so conveniently finds." "The police are always made out to be as blind as bats in detective stories," said Yup with a grin. "I found the clue once," said Poirot dreamily, "but since it was 4 feet long instead of 4 centimeters, no one would believe in it." I remembered the circumstances and laughed. Then I remembered my mission. "It's all right, Poirot," I said. "I watched, but no one was spying upon you as far as I could see." "The eyes of my friend Hastings," said Poirot in a kind of gentle mockery. "Tell me, my friend, did you notice the rose between my lips?" "The rose between your lips?" I asked in astonishment. Yup turned aside, spluttering with laughter. "You'll be the death of me, Monsieur Poirot," he said. "The death of me. A rose? What next?" "I had the fancy to pretend I was Carmen," said Poirot, quite undisturbed. I wondered if they were going mad or if I was. "You did not observe it, Hastings?" There was reproach in Poirot's voice. "No," I said, staring. "But then I couldn't see your face." "No matter." He shook his head gently. "Were they making fun of me?" "Well," said Yup, "no more to do here, I fancy. I'd like to see the daughter again if I could. She was too upset before for me to get anything out of her." He rang the bell for the butler. "Ask Miss Marsh if I can see her for a few moments." The man departed. It was not he, however, but Miss Carroll who entered the room a few minutes later. "Geraldine is asleep," she said. "She's had a terrible shock, poor child. After you left, I gave her something to make her sleep, and she's fast asleep now. In an hour or two, perhaps." Yup agreed. "In any case, there's nothing she can tell you that I can't," said Miss Carroll firmly. "What is your opinion of the butler?" asked Poirot. "I don't like him much, and that's a fact," replied Miss Carroll. "But I can't tell you why." We had reached the front door. "It was up there that you stood, was it not, last night, mademoiselle?" said Poirot suddenly, pointing with his hand up the stairs. "Yes. Why?" "And you say you saw Lady Edgware go along the hall into the study?" "Yes." "And you saw her face distinctly?" "Certainly." "But you could not have seen her face, mademoiselle. You can only have seen the back of her head from where you were standing." Miss Carroll flushed angrily. She seemed taken aback. Back of her head, her voice, her walk. It's all the same thing. Absolutely unmistakable. I tell you, I know it was Jane Wilkinson. A thoroughly bad woman, if there ever was one. And turning away, she flounced upstairs. End of Chapter 7. Chapter 8. Possibilities. Yop had to leave us. Poirot and I turned into Regent's Park and found a quiet seat. I see the point of your rose between the lips now, I said, laughing. At the moment I thought you'd gone mad. He nodded without smiling. You observe, Hastings, that the secretary is a dangerous witness. Dangerous because inaccurate. You notice that she stated positively that she saw the visitor's face. At the time, I thought that impossible. Coming from the study, yes, but not going to the study. So I made my little experiment, which resulted, as I thought, and then sprung my trap upon her. She immediately changed her ground. Her belief was quite unaltered, though, I argued, and after all, a voice and a walk are just as unmistakable. No. Why, Poirot? I think a voice and the general gait are about the most characteristic things about a person. I agree, and therefore they are the most easily counterfeited. You think? Cast your mind back a few days. Do you remember one evening as we sat in the stalls of a theater? Carlotta Adams? Ah, but then she's a genius. A well-known person is not so difficult to mimic, but I agree, she has unusual gifts. I believe she could carry a thing through without the aid of footlights and distance. A sudden thought flashed into my mind. Poirot, I cried, you don't think that possibly... No, that would be too much of a coincidence. It depends how you look at it, Hastings. Regarded from one angle, it would be no coincidence at all. But why should Carlotta Adams wish to kill Lord Poirot? She did not even know him. How do you know she did not know him? Do not assume things, Hastings. There may have been some link between them of which we know nothing. Not that that is precisely my theory. Then you have a theory? Yes. The possibility of Carlotta Adams being involved struck me from the beginning. But Poirot... Wait, Hastings. Let me put together a few facts for you. Lady Edgware, with a complete lack of reticence, discusses the relations between her and her husband, and even goes so far as to talk of killing him. Not only you and I hear this, a waiter hears it, her maid probably has heard it many times. Brian Martin hears it, and I imagine Carlotta Adams herself hears it. And there are the people to whom these people repeat it. Then, on that same evening, the excellence of Carlotta Adams' imitation of Jane is commented upon. Who had the motive for killing Lord Edgware? His wife. Now, supposing that someone else wishes to do away with Lord Edgware. Here is a scapegoat ready to his hand. On the day when Jane Wilkinson announces that she has a headache and is going to have a quiet evening, the plan is put into operation. Lady Edgware must be seen to enter the house in the Regent Gate. Well, she is seen. She even goes so far as to announce her identity. Ah, c'est un peu trop cas. It would awaken suspicion in an oyster. And another point, a small point, I admit. The woman who came to the house last night wore black. Jane Wilkinson never wears black. We heard her say so. Let us assume, then, that the woman who came to the house last night was not Jane Wilkinson, that it was a woman impersonating Jane Wilkinson. Did that woman kill Lord Edgware? Did a third person enter that house and kill Lord Edgware? If so, did the person enter before or after the supposed visit of Lady Edgware? If after, what did the woman say to Lord Edgware? How did she explain her presence? She might deceive the butler who did not know her, and the secretary who did not see her at close quarters, but she could not hope to deceive a husband. Was there only a dead body in the room? Was Lord Edward killed before she entered the house, sometime between 9 and 10? Stop, Poirot, I cried. You're making my head spin. No, my friend. We are only considering the possibilities. It is like trying on the clothes. Does this fit? No, it wrinkles on the shoulder. This one? Yes, that is better, but not quite large enough. This other one is too small. So on and so on, until we reach the perfect fit, the truth. Who do you suspect of such a fiendish plot? I asked. That is too early to say. One must go into the question of who has a motive for wishing Lord Edward dead. There is, of course, the nephew who inherits. A little obvious that, perhaps. And then, in spite of Miss Carroll's dogmatic pronouncement, there is the question of enemies. Lord Edward struck me as a man who very easily might make enemies. Yes, I agreed. That is so. Whoever it was must have fancied himself pretty safe. Remember, Hastings, but for her change of mind at the last minute, Jane Wilkinson would have had no alibi. She might have been in her room at the Savoy, and it would have been difficult to prove it. She would have been arrested, tried, probably hanged. I shivered. But there is one thing puzzles me, went on Poirot. The desire to incriminate her is clear. But what then of the telephone call? Why did someone ring her up at Chiswick and, once satisfied of her presence there, immediately ring off? It looks, does it not, as if someone wanted to be sure of her presence there before proceeding to... What? That was at 9:30, almost certainly before the murder. The intention then seems... There is no other word for it. Beneficent. It cannot be the murderer who rings up. The murderer has laid all his plans to incriminate Jane. Who then was it? It looks as though we have here two entirely different sets of circumstances. I shook my head, utterly fogged. It might be just a coincidence, I suggested. No. Everything cannot be a coincidence. 6 months ago a letter was suppressed. Why? There are too many things here unexplained. There must be some reason linking them together. He sighed. Presently he went on. That story that Brian Martin came to tell us. Surely, Poirot, that has got no connection with this business. You are blind, Hastings. Blind and willfully obtuse. Do you not see that the whole thing makes a pattern? A pattern confused at present, but which will gradually become clear? I felt Poirot was being over-optimistic. I did not feel that anything would ever become clear. My brain was frankly reeling. It's no good, I said suddenly. I can't believe it of Carlotta Adams. She seemed such a thoroughly nice girl. Yet even as I spoke, I remembered Poirot's words about love of money. Love of money. Was that at the root of the seemingly incomprehensible? I felt that Poirot had been inspired that night. He had seen Jane in danger, the result of her strange, egoistical temperament. He had seen Carlotta led astray by avarice. I do not think she committed the murder, Hastings. She is too cool and level-headed for that. Possibly she was not even told that murder would be done. She may have been used innocently. But then, he broke off frowning. Even so, she is an accessory after the fact now. I mean, she will see the news today. She will realize. A hoarse sound broke from Poirot. Quick, Hastings, quick! I have been blind. Imbecile! A taxi at once! I stared at him. He waved his arms. A taxi at once! One was passing. He hailed it, and we jumped in. Do you know her address? Carlotta Adams, do you mean? Mais oui. Quickly, Hastings, quickly. Every minute is of value, do you not see? No, I said, I don't. Poirot swore under his breath. The telephone book. No, she would not be in it. The theatre. At the theatre they were not disposed to give Carlotta's address, but Poirot managed it. It was a flat in a block of mansions near Sloane Square. We drove there, Poirot in a fever of impatience. If I am not too late, Hastings, if I am not too late. What is all this haste? I don't understand. What does it mean? It means that I have been slow, terribly slow, to realize the obvious. Oh, mon Dieu, if only we may be in time. End of Chapter 8. Chapter 9. The Second Death. Though I did not understand the reason for Poirot's agitation, I knew him well enough to be sure that he had a reason for it. We arrived at Rosedew Mansions. Poirot sprang out, paid the driver, and hurried into the building. Miss Adams' flat was on the first floor, as a visiting card stuck on a board informed us. Poirot hurried up the stairs, not waiting to summon the lift, which was at one of the upper floors. He knocked and rang. There was a short delay, then the door was opened by a neat, middle-aged woman with hair drawn tightly back from her face. Her eyelids were reddened as though with weeping. "Miss Adams?" demanded Poirot eagerly. The woman looked at him. "Haven't you heard?" "Heard? Heard what?" His face had already gone pale, and I realized that this, whatever it was what he had feared. The woman continued slowly to shake her head. "She's dead. Passed away in her sleep. It's terrible." Poirot leaned against the doorpost. "Too late," he murmured. His agitation was so apparent that the woman looked at him with more attention. "Excuse me, sir, but are you a friend of hers? I do not remember seeing you come here before." Poirot did not reply to this directly. Instead, he said, "You have had the doctor? What did he say?" "Took an overdose of a sleeping draught." "Oh, the pity of it. Such a nice young lady. Nasty, dangerous things, these drugs. Veronal, he said it was." Poirot suddenly stood upright. His manner took on a new authority. "I must come in," he said. The woman was clearly doubtful and suspicious. "I don't think," she began. But Poirot meant to have his way. He took probably the only course that would have obtained the desired result. "You must let me in," he said. "I am a detective, and I have got to inquire into the circumstance of your mistress' death." The woman gasped. She stood aside, and we passed into the flat. From there on, Poirot took command of the situation. "What I have told you," he said authoritatively, "is strictly confidential. It must not be repeated. Everyone must continue to think that Miss Adams' death was accidental. Please give me the name and address of the doctor you summoned." "Dr. Heath, 17 Carlisle Street." "And your own name?" "Bennet. Alice Bennet." "You were attached to Miss Adams, I can see, Miss Bennet." "Oh, yes, sir. She were a nice young lady. I worked for her last year when she was over here. It wasn't as though she were one of those actresses. She were a real young lady. Dainty ways she had, and liked everything just so." Poirot listened with attention and sympathy. He had now no signs of impatience. I realized that to proceed gently was the best way of extracting the information he wanted. "It must have been a great shock to you," he observed gently. "Oh, it was, sir. I took her in her tea at 9:30 as usual, and there she was lying asleep, I thought. And I put the tray down, and I pulled the curtains. One of the rings caught, sir, and I had to jerk it hard. Such a noise it made. I was surprised when I looked round to see she hadn't woken. And then all of a sudden something seemed to take hold of me, something not quite natural about the way she lay. And I went to the side of the bed, and I touched her hand. Icy cold it was, sir, and I cried out." She stopped, tears coming into her eyes. "Yes, yes," said Poirot sympathetically. "It must have been terrible for you. Did Miss Adams often take stuff to make her sleep?" "She's taken something for a headache now and again, sir. Some little tablets in a bottle, but it was some other stuff she took last night, or so the doctor said." "Did anyone come to see her last night? A visitor?" "No, sir. She was out yesterday evening, sir." "Did she tell you where she was going?" "No, sir. She went out about 7 o'clock. "Ah, how was she dressed?" She had on a black dress, sir. A black dress and a black hat. Poirot looked at me. Did she wear any jewelry? Just the string of pearls she always wore, sir. And gloves? Gray gloves? Yes, sir. Her gloves were gray. Ah. Now describe to me, if you will, what her manner was. Was she gay, excited, sad, nervous? It seemed to me she was pleased about something, sir. She kept smiling to herself as though there were some kind of joke on. What time did she return? A little after 12 o'clock, sir. And what was her manner then? The same? She was terribly tired, sir. But not upset or distressed? Oh, no, sir. I think she was pleased about something, but just done up, if you know what I mean. She started to ring someone up on the telephone, and then she said she couldn't bother. She'd do it tomorrow morning. Ah. Poirot's eyes gleamed with excitement. He leaned forward and spoke in a would-be indifferent voice. Did you hear the name of the person she rang up? No, sir. She just asked for the number and waited, and then the exchange must have said, I'm trying to get them, as they do, sir. And she said, all right. And then suddenly she yawned and said, oh, I can't bother, I'm too tired. And she put the receiver back and started undressing. And the number she called? Do you recollect that? Think, it may be important. I'm sorry, I can't say, sir. It was a Victoria number, and that's all I can remember. I wasn't paying special heed, you see. Did she have anything to eat or drink before she went to bed? A glass of hot milk, like she always did. Who prepared it? I did, sir. And nobody came to the flat that evening? Nobody, sir. And earlier in the day? Nobody came that I can remember, sir. Miss Adams was out to lunch and tea. She came in at 6 o'clock. When did the milk come? The milk she drank last night? It was the new milk she had, sir. The afternoon delivery. The boy leaves it outside the door at 4 o'clock. But, oh, sir, I'm sure there wasn't nothing wrong with the milk. I had it myself for tea this morning, and the doctor, he said positive that she'd taken the nasty stuff herself. It is possible that I am wrong, said Poirot. Yes, it is possible that I am entirely wrong. I will see the doctor. But you see, Miss Adams had enemies. Things are very different in America. He hesitated, but the good Alice leapt at the bait. Oh, I know, sir. I've read about Chicago and them gunmen and all that. It must be a wicked country, and what the police can be about I can't think. Not like our policemen. Poirot left it thankfully at that, realizing that Alice Bennet's insular proclivities would save him the trouble of explanations. His eye fell on a small suitcase, more of an attaché case, that was lying on a chair. Did Miss Adams take that with her when she went out last night? In the morning she took it, sir. She didn't have it when she came back at tea time, but she brought it back last thing. Ah, you permit that I open it? Alice Bennet would have permitted anything, like most canny and suspicious women. Once she had overcome her distrust, she was child's play to manipulate. She would have assented to anything Poirot suggested. The case was not locked. Poirot opened it. I came forward and looked over his shoulder. You see, Hastings, you see? He murmured excitedly. The contents were certainly suggestive. There was a box of make-up materials, 2 objects which I recognized as elevators to place in shoes and raise the height an inch or so. There was a pair of gray gloves, and, folded in tissue paper, an exquisitely made wig of golden hair, the exact shade of gold of Jane Wilkinson's, and dressed like hers with a center parting and curls in the back of the neck. Do you doubt now, Hastings? Added Poirot. I believe I had up to that moment, but now I doubted no longer. Poirot closed the case again and turned to the maid. You do not know with whom Miss Adams dined yesterday evening? No, sir. Do you know with whom she had lunch or tea? I know nothing about tea, sir. I believe she lunched with Miss Driver. Miss Driver. Yes, her great friend. She has a hat shop in Moffat Street, just off Bond Street. Genevieve, it's called. Poirot noted the address in his notebook just below that of the doctor. One thing more, madame. Can you remember anything at all, that Mademoiselle Adams said or did after she came in at 6 o'clock that strikes you as at all unusual or significant? The maid thought for a moment or two. I really can't say that I do, sir, she said at last. I asked her if she would have tea, and she said she'd had some. Oh, she said she had had it, interrupted Poirot. Oh, she said she had had it, interrupted Poirot. Pardon, continue. And after that she was writing letters till just on the time she went out. Letters, eh? You do not know to whom? Yes, sir, it was just one letter. To her sister in Washington. She wrote her sister twice a week, regular. She took the letter out with her to post because of catching the mail. But she forgot it. Then it is here still? No, sir, I posted it. She remembered last night just as she was getting into bed, and I said I'd run out with it. By putting an extra stamp on it and putting in the late fee box, it would go all right. Ah, and is that far? No, sir. The post office is just round the corner. Did you shut the door of the flat behind you? Bennett stared. No, sir. I just left it to... as I always do when I go out to post. Poirot seemed about to speak, then checked himself. Would you like to look at her, sir? Asked the maid tearfully. Looks beautiful, she does. We followed her into the bedroom. Carlotta Adams looked strangely peaceful, and much younger than she had appeared that night at the Savoy. She looked like a tired child asleep. There was a strange expression on Poirot's face as he stood looking down on her. I saw him make the sign of the cross. Je vais en sommeil. Hastings, he said as we went down the stairs. I did not ask him what his vow was. I could guess. A minute or two later he said, There is one thing off my mind at least. I could not have saved her. By the time I heard of Lord Edward's death, she was already dead. That comforts me. Yes, that comforts me very much. End of chapter 9. Chapter 10. Jenny Driver. Our next proceeding was to call upon the doctor whose address the maid had given us. He turned out to be a fussy elderly man, somewhat vague in manner. He knew Poirot by repute, and expressed a lively pleasure at meeting him in the flesh. And what can I do for you, Mr. Poirot? He asked after this opening preamble. You were called this morning, Monsieur le Docteur, to the bedside of a Miss Carlotta Adams. Ah, yes, poor girl. Clever actress, too. I've been twice to her show. 1,000 pities it's ended this way. Why, these girls must have drugs I can't think. You think she was addicted to drugs, then? Well, professionally, I should hardly have said so. At all events, she didn't take them hypodermically. No marks of the needle. Evidently always took it by the mouth. Maid said she slept well naturally. But then, maids never know. I don't suppose she took Veronal every night, but she'd evidently taken it for some time. What makes you think so? This. Dash it, where did I put the thing? He was peering into a small case. Ah, here it is. He drew out a small black Morocco handbag. There's got to be an inquest, of course. I brought this away so that the maid shouldn't meddle with it. Opening the pochette, he took out a small gold box. On it were the initials C.A. in rubies. It was a valuable and expensive trinket. The doctor opened it. It was nearly full of a white powder. Veronal, he explained briefly. Now look what's written inside. On the inside of the lid of the box was engraved, C.A. from D., Paris, November 10th. Sweet dreams. November 10th, said Poirot thoughtfully. Exactly. And we're now in June. That seems to show that she's been in the habit of taking the stuff for at least 6 months, and as the year isn't given, it might be 18 months, or 2 years and a half, or any time. Paris. D, said Poirot, frowning. Yes. Convey anything to you? By the way, I haven't asked you what your interest is in the case. I'm assuming you've got good grounds. I suppose you want to know if it's suicide? Well, I can't tell you. Nobody can. According to the maid's account, she was perfectly cheerful yesterday. It looks like an accident, and in my opinion, accident it is. Vera knows very uncertain stuff. You can take a devil of a lot and it won't kill you, and you can take very little and off you go. It's a dangerous drug for that reason. I have no doubt they'll bring it in accidental death of the inquest. I'm afraid I can be of not much more help to you. May I examine the little bag of mademoiselle? Certainly, certainly. Poirot turned out the contents of the pochette. There was a fine handkerchief with CMA in the corner, a powder puff, a lipstick, a pound note, and a little change, and a pair of pince-nez. These last Poirot examined with interest. They were gold-rimmed, and rather severe and academic in type. Curious, said Poirot. I did not know that Miss Adams wore glasses, but perhaps they are for reading. The doctor picked them up. No, these are outdoor glasses, he affirmed. Pretty powerful, too. The person who wore these must have been very short-sighted. You do not know of Miss Adams? I never attended her before. I was called in once to see the poisoned finger of the maids. Otherwise, I've never been in the flat. Miss Adams, whom I saw for a moment on that occasion, was certainly not wearing glasses then. Poirot thanked the doctor, and we took our leave. Poirot wore a puzzled expression. It can be that I am mistaken, he admitted. About the impersonation? No, no. That seems to me proved. No, I mean as to her death. Obviously she had Veronal in her possession. It is possible that she was tired and strung up last night, and determined to ensure herself a good night's rest. Then he suddenly stopped dead to the great surprise of the passers-by, and beat one hand emphatically on the other. No, 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 he declared emphatically. Why should that accident happen so conveniently? It was no accident. It was not suicide. No, she played her part, and in doing so she signed her death warrant. Veronal may have been chosen simply because it was known that she occasionally took it, and that she had that box in her possession. But, if so, the murderer must have been someone who knew her well. Who is D, Hastings? I would give a good deal to know who D was. Poirot, I said as he remained wrapped in thought, hadn't we better go on? Everyone is staring at us. Yes, perhaps you are right. Though it does not incommode me that people should stare, it does not interfere in the least with my train of thought. People were beginning to laugh, I murmured. That has no importance. I did not quite agree. I have a horror of doing anything conspicuous. The only thing that affects Poirot is the possibility of the damp or the heat affecting the set of his famous moustache. We will take a taxi, said Poirot, waving his stick. One drew up by us, and Poirot directed it to go to Genevieve in Moffat Street. Genevieve turned out to be one of those establishments where one nondescript hat and a scarf display themselves in a glass box downstairs, and where the real center of operations is one floor up a flight of musty-smelling stairs. Having climbed the stairs, we came to a door with Genevieve, please walk in, on it. And having obeyed this command, we found ourselves in a small room full of hats, while an imposing blonde creature came forward with a suspicious glance at Poirot. Miss Driver? Asked Poirot. I do not know if Madame can see you. What is your business, please? Please tell Miss Driver that a friend of Miss Adams would like to see her. The blonde beauty had no need to go on this errand. A black velvet curtain was violently agitated, and a small, vivacious creature with flaming red hair emerged. What's that? She demanded. Are you Miss Driver? Yes, what's that about Carlotta?
You have heard the sad news?
What sad news?
Miss Adams died in her sleep last night. An overdose of Vernal.
The girl's eyes opened wide. How awful! She exclaimed. Poor La Carlotta! I can hardly believe it. Why, she was full of life yesterday.
Nevertheless, it is true, mademoiselle, said Poirot. Now see, it is just on 1 o'clock. I want you to do me the honor of coming out to lunch with me and my friend. I want to ask you several questions.
The girl looked him up and down. She was a pugilistic little creature. She reminded me in some ways of a fox terrier. Who are you? She demanded bluntly.
My name is Hercule Poirot. This is my friend Captain Hastings.
I bowed. Her glance traveled from one to the other of us. I've heard of you, she said abruptly. I'll come. She called to the blonde. Dorothy.
Yes, Jenny?
Mrs. Lester's coming in about that Rose Descartes model we were making for her. Try the different feathers. Bye-bye. Shan't be long, I expect. She picked up a small black hat, affixed it to one ear, powdered her nose furiously, and then looked at Poirot. Ready, she said abruptly. 5 minutes afterwards, we were sitting in a small restaurant in Dover Street. Poirot had given an order to the waiter, and cocktails were in front of us. Now, said Jenny Driver, I want to know the meaning of all this. What has Carlotta been getting herself mixed up in?
Has she been getting herself mixed up in something, then, mademoiselle?
Now, then who's going to ask the questions, you or me?
My idea was that I should, said Poirot, smiling. I have been given to understand that you and Miss Adams were great friends.
Right.
Eh bien, then I ask you, mademoiselle, to accept my solemn assurance that what I do I am doing in the interests of your dead friend. I assure you that is so.
There was a moment's silence while Jenny Driver considered this question. Finally, she gave a quick, assenting nod of the head. I believe you. Carry on. What do you want to know?
I understand, mademoiselle, that your friend lunched with you yesterday.
She did?
Did she tell you what her plans were for last night?
She didn't exactly mention last night.
But she said something.
Well, she mentioned something that maybe is what you're driving at. Mind you, she spoke in confidence.
That is understood.
Well, let me see now. I think I'd better explain things in my own words.
If you please, mademoiselle.
Well, then, Carlotta was excited. She isn't often excited. She's not that kind. She wouldn't tell me anything definite, said she'd promised not to, but she'd got something on, something I gathered in the nature of a gigantic hoax.
A hoax?
That's what she said. She didn't say how, or when, or where, only, she paused, frowning. Well, you see, Carlotta's not the kind of person who enjoys practical jokes, or hoaxes, or things of that kind. She was one of those serious, nice-minded, hard-working girls. What I mean is, somebody had obviously put her up to this stunt, and I think... She didn't say so, mind.
No, I quite understand. What was it that you thought?
I was sure, that in some way money was concerned. Nothing really ever excited Carlotta except money. She was made that way. She'd got one of the best heads for business I've ever met. She wouldn't have been so excited and so pleased unless money, quite a lot of money, had been concerned. My impression was that she'd taken on something for a bet, and that she was pretty sure of winning. And yet, that isn't quite true, I mean. Carlotta didn't bet. I've never known her to make a bet. But anyway, somehow or other, I'm sure money was concerned.
She did not actually say so?
No. Just said that she'd be able to do this, that, and the other in the near future. She was going to get her sister over from America to meet her in Paris. She was crazy about her little sister. Very delicate, I believe. And musical. Well, that's all I know. Is that what you want?
Poirot nodded his head. Yes, it confirms my theory. I had hoped, I admit, for more. I had anticipated that Miss Adams would have been bound to secrecy, but I hoped that, being a woman, she would not have counted revealing the secret to her best friend.
I tried to make her tell me, admitted Jenny, but she only laughed and said she'd tell me all about it some day. Poirot was silent for a moment. Then he said,
You know the name of Lord Edgware?
What? The man who was murdered? On a poster half an hour ago.
Yes. Do you know if Miss Adams was acquainted with him?
I don't think so. I'm sure she wasn't. Oh, wait a minute.
Yes, mademoiselle, said Poirot eagerly. What was it now?
She frowned, knitting her brow as she tried to remember. Yes, I've got it now. She mentioned him once, very bitterly.
Bitterly?
Yes. She said, what was it? That men like that shouldn't be allowed to ruin other people's lives by their cruelty and lack of understanding. She said, why, so she did, that he was the kind of a man whose death would probably be a good thing for everybody.
When was it she said this, mademoiselle?
Oh, about a month ago, I think it was.
How did the subject come up?
Jenny Driver racked her brains for some minutes and finally shook her head. I can't remember, she confessed. His name cropped up or something. It might have been in the newspaper. Anyway, I remember thinking it odd that Carlotta should be so vehement all of a sudden when she didn't even know the man.
Certainly it is odd,
agreed Poirot thoughtfully. Then he asked,
Do you know if Miss Adams was in the habit of taking Veronal?
Not that I knew. I never saw her take it or mention taking it.
Did you ever see in her bag a small gold box with the initial CA on it in rubies?
A small gold box? No, I'm sure I didn't.
Do you happen to know where Miss Adams was last November?
Let me see. She went back to the States in November, I think, towards the end of the month. Before that, she was in Paris.
Alone?
Alone, of course. Sorry, perhaps you didn't mean that. I don't know why any mention of Paris always suggests the worst, and it's such a nice, respectable place, really. But Carlotta wasn't the week-ending sort, if that's what you're driving at.
Now, mademoiselle, I'm going to ask you a very important question. Was there any man Miss Adams was specially interested in?
The answer to that is no, said Jenny slowly. Carlotta, since I've known her, has been wrapped up in her work and in her delicate sister. She's had the head of the family, all depends on me attitude very strongly. So the answer's no, strictly speaking.
Ah, and not still strictly speaking?
I shouldn't wonder if, lately, Carlotta hadn't been getting interested in some man.
Ah,
mind you, that's entirely guesswork on my part. I've gone simply by her manner. She's been different. Not exactly dreamy, but abstracted. And she's looked different somehow. Oh, I can't explain. It's the sort of thing that another woman just feels, and of course, may be quite wrong about.
Poirot nodded. Thank you, mademoiselle. One thing more. Is there any friend of Miss Adams whose initial is D?
D, said Jenny Driver thoughtfully. D? No, I'm sorry. I can't think of anyone. End of chapter 10.